Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Empowered Hormones podcast. I'm your host, Sheradyn, and today I have the privilege of speaking to Dr. Amy Beckley. So, Amy has a PhD in hormone signaling and has been studying reproductive hormones for over 15 years. Her personal battle with infertility and miscarriage has led her to invent Prov, a better way to track your hormones to get pregnant faster. So, thank you so much for being here, Amy. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
It is amazing to be here. One of my favorite topics is talking about hormones. So I'm super excited to talk to you.
I would hope so, because you've been studying it for 15 years. Either you're over it by that point, or you're still like, yes, this is such important information to get out there in the world.
I mean, it's just so fascinating and interesting that like how intricate it is and like how it can get off balance so easily. And then B, how nobody knows anything about it. And it's like you could talk to somebody and they're like having these symptoms. I'm like, have you had your hormones checked?
Yeah, it seems like the basic stuff goes past us these days because it's the same with the gut, right? Like people literally should be pooing every day and they're not, and they don't even connect the dots sometimes that it's like because we can't see it. We can't see our ovaries, we can't see our intestines. It's like we disassociate from our body really quickly. Like I think that happens.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not right in front of you, then it's a mystery.
Yeah, it's hard to know what's going on. And I love that you've obviously come into this hormone space from your own journey. So I'd love to know a little bit about what your own sort of personal battle was and how that led you to come, to study for 15 years, because 15 years is a long time. If I'm still doing gut stuff in 15 years, I would be surprised because I feel like I might be over it by then. But I would love to know a little bit more about how you got into this space.
Yeah, I mean, I originally got into wanting to be a medical doctor, and it was because when I was 16, I had a brain tumor. And it was one of those things where, like, it was a common symptom, like you had migraines. Oh, you just have migraines. Let's just put you on this medication. But I had a doctor that just like went above and beyond. Is like, let's just go get an MRI. Let's just be safe. And thank God he did that because he found a big tumor that was causing like the circulation to be cut off. And long story short is, I got it removed. I'm okay now. But like that whole experience was like, we need to not just do standard of care. We need to go above and beyond. Like we need to like think of things and do extra stuff. And so I wanted to be a doctor so that I could do that for patients. I went to school and I found out I did not like needles. And I would almost pass out when I saw needles going into skin. So I said, I probably should change my career path. And that led me to working in biotech. And that's where I got into the love of hormones and diseases and what happens with, when things go wrong. So I've done stress signalings when your body's under too much stress, what happens. I've done stuff with breast cancer. So breast cancer, if it stays in your breast tissue, it's not harmful. It's not going to kill you. But when it metastasizes, that's where it gets really dangerous. Through looking at how that transition happens. So that was like, that's really cool that you could basically give you a hormone and it would stop the cancer. And then something happened, then you gave the same hormones and all of a sudden it would fuel it to leave and metastasize to your lungs. So I thought it was really crazy how your body just changes under stress and cancer and disease. Is that's where I got really like passionate about hormones. And then here I am, this hormone biologist that's doing all this amazing, cool science. And I come off birth control. Oh, how easy, how hard could it be to get pregnant? Oh my gosh, I had the worst time. Like I had to Google, like, how do you track your cycle? What does, what is this? What is that? Um, and I just realized that there weren't very many tools out there for women to understand. And healthcare just let you just fester, let you just go at yourself by yourself. And I was probably 7 months into my journey and I got pregnant. I was so excited. A week later, I lost the pregnancy. But I thought, hey, maybe this pain, this what I just went through will let me go to the doctor and get some help. they turned me away. They said it is common. It happens, 25% of pregnancies, it's not abnormal. And it was like, what? Like, this is crazy to me that we're not there to support women and give them information. And so, like, fast forward, had lots more miscarriages, finally went to a reproductive endocrinologist to understand it. They ran all the tests they possibly could, and they gave me my diagnosis, unexplained infertility. I said, that's great. You've no idea what's wrong with me. And so what you do for unexplained infertility, or at least what reproductive endocrinologists do, is IVF. So IVF is I call it a really big medical band-aid. It will bypass, you don't need your sperm to swim. You don't need, your eggs will mature, a whole bunch of them. So if there's some that are bad, you don't need tubes. You don't need all this stuff. We'll give you the hormones. So you just basically like tried to bypass everything and make it happen. So I did get pregnant, my second cycle, and my son is now 14. And then I, got that itch to like have another baby. And I said, this time I don't want to do IVF. I want to really understand what was keeping me from conceiving and try. So I went back to the doctor. I sat down to him. I'm like, look, PhD to MD, let's talk this out. Like, what did we miss? Why did IVF work? I couldn't do it myself. We dissected all the things that were done in IVF that, weren't part of what I was doing naturally. And we fell on the idea of progesterone. And, every single IVF cycle, women are given a whole bunch of progesterone. And I said, why? So, well, it supports implantation. And I'm like, well, doesn't your body make it? He's like, yes, but studies show that pregnancy rates increase up to 50% if you give progesterone after, after we do the egg retrieval. I said, great. Can I just have the progesterone, but out of the context of IVF? And he's like, well, we don't really know if it works, but it's not going to harm anything. So if that's what you want to do, great. So that's what I did. 2 months in, got pregnant, my almost 11-year-old daughter. And I was like, wow, I went through so much, so many miscarriages, so much infertility, so much waiting, 2 rounds of IVF, countless dollars in lab tests and needle, and which I don't like needles, all that stuff, when I literally could have just had progesterone, which is a generic medication that's given to a lot of menopausal women. It's given in part of IVF, and I was like, wow.
Why is that the case? Just because from a doctor's point of view or a fertility doctor's point of view, they haven't connected the dots, or like it just seems wild almost that they would not try something so simple before putting you through the expense and the time and the emotion. I've had plenty of clients who've gone through rounds of IVF and not fallen pregnant, and the emotional upheaval of that it's incredible.
Yeah, I asked the same question and I have theories. The best one I have is, IVF is very expensive. And there's a lot of companies that make the medications, the injectables, they make, the ITSY machines and the incubators and all that stuff. And so they have a financial interest to show, IVF works better than not IVF, or my apparatus or my medication or whatever works better than the other thing. But nobody really does that outside of the context of IVF. And so you have this thing called progesterone that, they've developed a IVF friendly, expensive version of it that they show in the context of IVF. But when you look up the approval documents, it's for IVF. It doesn't say to support a natural cycle or anything like that. And so there just hasn't been studies. And so if you don't do a study, you can't say we know that it works. But like, it's the same thing. You just don't do IVF.
Yeah. So do you think, or have you seen, this is where my brain's starting to go, it's like, are these women presenting with low progesterone necessarily before they're sort of going down that route? So could you be having fine cycles, let's say, and you miscarriage, then you go, hey, I'm going to try supplementing with some progesterone to support my pregnancy? Or typically you're seeing them maybe PCOS and ovulatory cycles, low progesterone, so then they add the progesterone in.
Yeah, so that's the issue. That was a barrier. So I told you I was unexplained infertile. I've had blood progesterone tests. It just tells you if you've released an egg or not. So I was getting pregnant, right? And so the mechanics of your ovaries is a negative feedback loop. And so if you have low progesterone, your body goes, oh, we need more. And it just like shoots out a whole bunch of it. And so you have these waves that go throughout the day. They're up, down, up, down. And so that's been documented in literature countless times. And so doctors know, okay, I can take a blood draw and I can say if it's above a certain level, you've released an egg, but I can't tell you if that is a good enough level to support pregnancy. And so we've said, okay, well, maybe it's 10 or maybe it's 15 or maybe it's 20. Like let's get as high a number as possible. But there hasn't really been a good diagnostic tool to understand, you have to not just have high progesterone on one moment. It has to be high for like the entire time that your egg got fertilized. It leaves the ovary, goes through the fallopian tube down to the uterus to implant. It takes 10 days. So you have to have enough progesterone during that entire time to support a healthy implantation. If you're getting one progesterone blood draw, it's not sufficient. And so in my case, I had the blood draw, showed I had had progesterone enough to say that I released an egg. But then, 2 days later, 9 days after I ovulated, I would start spotting and I started getting my period. And so they weren't tracking long enough. And that's where they were missing my diagnosis. The other thing is, what I have is called a luteal phase defect. The medical community does not like that word. They don't know if it's real. They don't know if it's a true thing. And it's because there's no diagnostic test for it. And so, if you can't see it and go, oh, this is what this is, then it's like, is it real? I don't know.
Yeah, because my brain from there then goes, well, okay, in theory, you want to be blood testing progesterone every day for like 2 weeks, right? Which is so impractical, and I don't know how that would even work. But the testing I run is either your saliva testing, which is great, but again, it's still a snapshot. It's not looking at it. The only one that I reckon would get close to that is the Dutch cycle mapping, where it's mapping you for your 30 odd days, and then you'd be able to tell, and then you could probably say, yeah, I do have a luteal phase defect. But other than that, you're right. I don't think there's any testing that maps it across.
Yeah, I mean, well, there is now because I invented it. So that's what Prove does, is it tracks the same hormones that the Dutch does in that cycle mapping test. So we do estrogen metabolites, we do progesterone metabolites, and it's in urine, first morning urine. So it's non-invasive. You do it at home. We send you the test strips. So it's not like Dutch where you have to collect the urine things and like wait all cycle and then send it to a lab. We have the lab basically on your phone, where it's like a pregnancy test where you dip it in urine and you wait to see the lines. We take that and you like snap a picture in your app, and it takes it to our backend where we quantitate the hormones. And so the app basically says, you should test on this day, you should test on that day, and then it tells you the hormones and it analyzes your cycle. And so our like thing that we invented was, we're going to test 7, 8, 9, and 10 days after ovulation, and we're going to look for sustained elevated levels. And if they're not, then we flag it and say, that's not happening. And, you could be a candidate for having an ovulation issue. I think a common misconception is an issue with ovulation is you just don't release an egg, but ovulation is more than that. It takes an entire cycle, right? So you have to have an egg, it has to mature, and then it has to ovulate. But then the follicle that the egg ovulated out of has to start producing progesterone as well as estrogen to support implantation. And so for a truly successful ovulation, you have to have a healthy egg. Then you have to have a healthy ovary that makes a healthy amount of hormones to support that whole thing. And it's not just for conception, it's for everything. I mean, women, I mean, I'm 44, starting to go through perimenopause, their ovaries basically shut down. And the first hormone that goes is progesterone. And that causes the weight gain, the insomnia, the heavier periods, the irritation, the brain fog. And it's like, it's part of a healthy cycle. You're supposed to have enough estrogen and then enough progesterone, and it's a healthy, balanced cycle. And then when that's off of balance, you're infertile, miscarriage, horrible menopause symptoms, PMS, heavy periods, painful periods, like all these things that women deal with across their entire lifestyle.
And isn't that a game changer then with Prof? Because what I classically see happen is women coming into perimenopause, but they've still got their periods, but they're not quite right. They go to their GP, they do a blood draw, and they go, nah, it's fine. It's not peri. You're fine. You're probably just depressed. They prescribe antidepressants, anxiety medication. These women think they're going crazy. They're actually not going crazy, but they have no validation of what they're feeling. Whereas when you would test something like that and you'd be like, sure, you are still releasing your egg, but you don't have sustained progesterone. This is why your mood's going. And like you listed all those symptoms, they start occurring. Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So we actually just launched a perimenopause test. It's called Empower. And what it does is it tracks hormones. So it's kind of like the cycle mapping that Dutch does, but we do 4 tests across the cycle. So we do one when hormones are low in the beginning of the cycle, when estrogen is supposed to be high, and then 2 when progesterone is supposed to be high. We're looking for those sustained levels. And really, it's an educational platform to tell women, you're still making estrogen or you're not, you're still making progesterone or you're not. And it may or may not be related to perimenopause, but it allows women to see their hormones and match that to their symptoms so that they can advocate for themselves. Because I go to the doctor whenever she has an appointment, and then I'll go in and get a blood draw. I don't know what part of my cycle I'm at. Like, I don't know what it's going to say. You can't possibly understand hormones for doing it like a single point in time.
Yeah. I also, what I'm thinking I love about this is not only for peri, not only for trying to fall pregnant and those things, but just for the general female like myself, say, who's like, okay, I've had a history of amenorrhea. I had 7 years of no periods. I know I'm prone to adrenal PCOS. If I get stressed, I'll lose my period pretty quickly. So I know progesterone's always been an issue for me because my body does not like to ovulate if it's under stress, right? So being able to track that and understand that is, for me, really important, regardless of wanting to have a baby and regardless of being so many years away from perimenopause too. Like, this tool is quite incredible and can be very widely used then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I created this product because I dealt with infertility and miscarriage, and we kept getting women say, I have hormone issues, or at least I think I have hormone issues. I don't know because I haven't been able to get them tested. Do you have anything for me? I'm not trying to conceive. And that's where we started to kind of think, okay, well, we've built a company of 7 years of tracking women's cycles. We know what a healthy, normal cycle looks like because it's essential to get pregnant, to have a nice, healthy cycle. And so if we can take that same idea and say, okay, well, if she's having PMS or heavy period issues or whatever the symptom is, it could be hormonal. Like, can we understand if it's a imbalanced cycle type of thing? And so that's what we're trying to do in the perimenopause space. And then hopefully we'll kind of expand on and capture more women, because we're not told about our hormones as much as we should.
Yeah, I think also it opens women's field of things because it's one thing to say, hey, I've got low progesterone, right? And then you go, okay, well, I've got low progesterone. That's not book closed now. It's like, okay, why do I have low progesterone? Because then it opens it up to what's going on with the adrenal glands. Are you eating enough food? Are you getting your key nutrients in? Are you exercising too much? Like, it does start to then open that whole book, which are all things that a GP won't explore with you either. So I love that it opens that field of things for women to start going, okay, what's the root cause of this? I don't know if in your case it was then a genetic component as such, because there's obviously different things that are going to impact progesterone. And if women have explored all those avenues, like they are going, I'm eating enough food, I'm exercising moderately, I'm taking all my organ meats, I'm really good with my B's and my zinc and this and that, which are all going to impact it. Then it's like, well, then why do I have low progesterone? Like, I think, and that's when you go, okay, maybe you do need a supplement with it, because we can't get your body to produce it even when supporting it. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never really figured out why I have low progesterone. Like a big one is thyroid function. So I've had my thyroid function tested many times. Um, I mean, obviously I'm always under stress, but yeah, I don't know. I do know that when you have an imbalanced cycle, the longer it goes on, the harder it is to get it back. And so even putting yourself on supplemental progesterone for a couple months actually helps balance yourself out, because when, like in cases of PCOS, you're making these follicles, you're making this huge amount of estrogen, and they're gearing up, and it's just, they try to, come on, like kick this egg out, and it just doesn't happen. And so you don't make any progesterone. And so now you're left with this huge imbalance. And so now when your body tries to do it again, there's so much estrogen, it's really, really hard to mature an egg when there's such high estrogen, because that is a signal to tell you, hey, I already have a mature egg, we don't need to make them anymore. And then you get into this like vicious cycle where it just gets worse and worse. That's why a lot of doctors say, hey, just go on birth control for a cycle or two, quiet your ovaries, and then we'll come back. That's kind of the thinking on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you give that person progesterone, a couple of cycles and try to balance it out, your body's not so imbalanced that it can't kind of help regulate itself. And so sometimes it's just a hormone imbalance just got so far out of kilter that it's almost impossible to get back unless you do something.
So if someone's using the Prov test, they go, hey, I do want to fall pregnant and my progesterone's low. Is it a simple case to get their hands on that progesterone then? Because if your GP is recognizing in the bloods that your progesterone is fine and you're saying, well, I've got data saying it's not, I mean, are you still stuck then?
Yeah, so that was a big thing that we came across was, you have this home test that you bought on Amazon, and then you have some doctor who's never heard of this thing. There's some friction there. Um, and so we actually partnered with a telehealth physician who can prescribe progesterone as needed. And so you go through the app, you get your results, and then it's like there's a button that says like looking for next steps, and you can walk through, we'll help you understand what it means, give you options. And one of the options is to ask a physician for progesterone, which, you fill out, you get the prescription, it goes to the pharmacy, it gets delivered to your house. So try to make it as easy as possible. I think, standard of care and just how at least the US handles medicine is it's not proactive, it's reactive. And you're just seeing so much IVF and, just really expensive procedures, and then just it's like nothing. Okay, now do IVF. It's
Yeah.
like we want to be that like in between spot where it's like I tried, it's not working, what else can I do at home? It's just a lot of couples are going to IVF when they don't have to. And so just educating, empowering, giving options. Progesterone's not the magic bullet for every single person, but I personally would try it before I drop $20,000 on a cycle of IVF.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
seems like maybe I should try this first.
Yeah, 100%. And I see that inside my programs. I have a 6-month program, the root cause program, and in there, women are typically sort of coming in with gut issues and then some secondary hormonal issues as well. And I do see that there's more awareness now, women going, I need to work on my gut health and my hormone health prior to having a baby, because I'm starting to understand, because I do feel like as there is a rise in gut issues and there is a rise in infertility and miscarriages and things like that, women are starting to go, hey, it may not be that easy. Some women it is, but sometimes it's not. So then they're going, wait a second, if I work on these things for 6 months prior and actually get my body up to scratch, and then if you do start tracking it and use the Prov test and you look at your cervical mucus and you track your cycle and you use fertility awareness, then come 6 to 12 months time where you go, okay, I want to have a baby, you're ready full bottle as to what your progesterone's doing. And then if you go, you know what, it's sat low and I've got a luteal phase deficit for the last 6 months, you can straight away go onto the progesterone and go, cool, let's give this a good shot from there, rather than trying for another 2 years and then going through a couple of years IVF and then going, wait a second, maybe I should look at that progesterone.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the testing available worldwide?
Not completely worldwide, but we're approved in a lot of countries. So US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK, France, Spain, Italy, Germany,
Amazing.
Brazil.
Amazing. I love that. And for people wanting to get their hands on the test and purchase the testing, is the best way just through your website, or how, for people wanting to know more, can they get their hands on it?
Yes, the website's the best resource. I would absolutely recommend signing up for the newsletter. Another one of our pillars is education. We really want to help you understand your body, advocate for yourself. There's a lot of misinformation out there, or not teaching it in school, so you got to get it somewhere. But it's proovtest.com. And then we have the same, prove test on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, huge Facebook community. Women don't have anybody to talk to during it. And so we created a really good support community where they can share results, share what do I do next, what's this, what's that, and have a safe space to communicate with other women going through the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. And for anyone listening, I am going to link the website show notes in the Instagram. I'll tag that obviously in the show notes and also in my stories when I post about this as well. So you guys can go have a look. But Amy, thank you so much. I just think your knowledge and your story is second to none. And you've also opened my eyes so much about just tracking that. I've never really thought about tracking that second part of progesterone. Like, I'm used to using the Dutch where it is still, it's a great test. I love it. It's got so many good markers that I need for so many things in the work I do. But I also think there is, or has been, that gap in knowledge going, hey, what's happening for that next sort of 10 days, because there is such a change in symptoms at that point. So it is definitely something I will be pulling into my clinic because I love it. So just thank you for the information and for chasing this and empowering women with this knowledge.
Yeah, I wish nobody to go through the pain of infertility and miscarriage like I did. So if there's anything that I can pass on to people, I will happily do that.
Thank you.